disagreed to, and I call the member for Melbourne.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. It would be one thing to come into this place and say, look, for policy reasons we disagree with what the Senator's just done. We all want to achieve a certain outcome, but we think there's a better way of doing it from what the Senate has, and here's a series of reasoned arguments as to why that's wrong. But to come in here and call it a shabby process shows us really what is motivating this government. Only a blue-blood government with a born-to-rule mentality would call democracy a shabby process. What happened yesterday in the Senate was the Senate said, we have an opportunity here to introduce a bit of transparency into our tax system. We have an opportunity to say that rules should apply across the board so that those people and those companies that are at the top end of the income spectrum in Australia have to disclose the amount of tax that they earn so that Australians can have an informed debate, so that we can have the kind of debate that the Prime Minister has urged us all to have, where we know the facts and they're put on the table, and we can have a reasoned debate about who should pay their fair share of tax. We're reading in the papers every day a new argument about why everyday Australians should pay a bit more in terms of the rise of the GST. And then when we say, well, wouldn't it be good if Australia did what some other countries have done and say, let's have a disclosure about how much tax some of the wealthiest companies operating here are actually paying, so that consumers might then be able to vote with their feet, or that voters might be able to say perhaps it's right that they should pay a little bit more. Perhaps tax reform should start at the top rather than starting at the bottom. Perhaps you should go after some of those very, very wealthy private companies in Australia who may be operating under various other arrangements. Perhaps you should go after others instead of coming after us first. The Senate said, and the Senate in this instance is much more representative of the Australian people than this government is, the Senate said maybe we can improve this bill by including a requirement not only for all the things the government wants to do, but include something that would make it better, something that would introduce a bit more transparency into our tax system. But what we know, and we see it on every occasion, whether it's immigration, whether it's taxation, what we know is that transparency is to this government what sunlight is to a vampire. They are scared of knowing the facts and having the facts made available to the Australian people. And we see it time and time and time again. Well, first things first, if you want a more informed debate about tax in this country, then let the Australian people know how much tax is being paid by the people at the top end of town. Let us know, and then we can have an informed and reasoned debate. And if you believe in democracy, don't come in here and call what happened in the Senate a shabby process. What happened in the Senate was that people from across different parts of the political spectrum said it is our role as the upper house of this parliament to hold a government to account. It is our role to hold a government to account, and when we think the government could be doing better, we will tell them how. And when the government says the only way to deal with tax in this system is to shield our rich mates from having to give the kind of information that in other countries is provided on a regular basis, the Senate said, well, we don't agree with that. The Senate said, we don't agree with that. And we feel, the more that we have learnt about what has happened, we feel that we have been misled. We have been misled when organisations came to us and said there are good reasons as to why this should happen, pretending to be grassroots organisations. The Senate said we were astroturfed. The Senate said there was an organisation set up only to deal with the proposed mechanism that had been floated previously about requiring a bit more transparency, an organisation that was set up to represent the top part of the 1% that most people in this country could never aspire to be in. And they fronted up and they said that they were representative of what was going on. We, the Greens, called them out early, but others said, well, we didn't realise that you weren't what you said, and so we want to revisit the decision that we'd made before, and we want to take this chance to improve the bill. Well, what happened in the Senate was democracy, and the Greens are incredibly proud to have moved the amendments that are now here before this House. And I would have hoped that the government might give it a bit of reasoned consideration. I would have hoped the government might think about it for a bit more than the 12 hours overnight that it's done it. But no, the government's come in here and said it's our way or the highway. Well, we're going to stand up for these amendments, and I'm very, very pleased to have been part of having them got passed yesterday.
I thank the member